Hello everyone, Matthew here. Right, today a segmented bowl made of purple heart and maple. 2 bits of purple heart, that'll go at the top. This bit will go at the bottom because the kind of midline of the bowl is going to be there for about 3/5 of the way up. We'll see how it all fits together in a second. But for now, first thing, these have to be made the same size so they'll fit together properly. Now, to cut the grooves in this thing to make the interesting segmented bit, I need to mount this on a milling machine, which means I need to be able to hold it in a chuck. But because this is going to be the top of the bowl, I want to make a hole and grip from the inside. So what we need is to make a mortise in here. This is the bottom piece of the bowl. It used to be square. I've taken the corners off on the bandsaw. Because this will be the base of the bowl, I don't want to cut into it because then we'd be losing bits of bowl. So I'm going to cut a tenon here, and that's what the engineering chuck on the mill is going to hold this by when we're cutting grooves in the other side to make the segmented bits. Right, these things are now ready to be mounted on the mill. So this is how the bowl will be when it's finished. There's the top, so we've got this hollow in here that we can use to hold it. Here's the bottom, there's the tenon that we can use to hold that. What we now need to do is cut a whole load of little slots in here and in here so that we can then put some maple bits in there and make out a segmented pattern. So, over to the mill. Right, this is the top section of the bowl. It's held by the mortise that we cut in a chuck on a rotary table on a milling machine. It's been centred so that the central axis of this is level with the central axis of the milling machine, which is important because we want the slots to go straight along radii of this piece. The slots that we're going to be cutting in order to put little bits of maple in here are going to form, get my book, a binary sequence that looks like this. So the rotary table has 90 rotations of the handle per 1 rotation of the table. If we go 2 rotations of the handle per slot, we get 45 slots, and 32 bits of data fits reasonably well into 45 slots. We go 8 bits, 2 blank sort of sections, then 8, 2, 8, 2, 8, and then 7 blanks. The 1s are going to be deep slots, and the 0s are going to be shallow slots. So what we're going to do now is go around and cut all of the 1s. Okay, that's the top piece cut. All of the slots have been cut in it, and I've cleaned it up with a little bit of sandpaper. So our binary sequence went 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. And if you look, that's obviously the way up this will be. You can see this goes 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, and so on, all the way around. There's the second bite, third bite, fourth bite, and then a big gap until we get back to the first one. So, next task is do the exact same thing to the bottom piece, taking care to go in the opposite direction, because of course they're going to go face to face, cutting the exact same pattern, and then we'll have 2 bits that can fit together, and we can put some bits of wood in here to fill the slots in with a different colour. Right, 2 bits of bowl cut. That's the hard part. That's the kind of boring part, and the bit it's easy to get wrong, and if you get it wrong, you've buggered it up and you have to start again. So I'm glad that's over with. Now, We have to check they actually are correct, so here we go. There's the bottom, here's the top, and if you line the bits up, we can see that this goes 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, well, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, and 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. That is our binary sequence. So what we now need to do is make bits of maple that can slot into these bits and glue it all together. Okay, cutting the bits to size is done on a bandsaw. This is a piece of scrap wood. It's no good to just measure between the blade and the fence. You've got to test that this is going to be about right. So that fits snugly but easily into the slots here, which is exactly the way we want it. There has to be enough room for the glue to go in. You don't want it in there fitting in there tight, because there's 32 of these things. If one of them is tight, then 32 of them is an impossible amount of force. You're not going to fit it together. You need a tiny little bit of play so that you'll be able to wiggle everything into place. So this is just about perfect. Fingers crossed the bandsaw will stay that way while we're cutting everything, and all of our bits of maple will be that size. Right, cutting. Okay, having tested again on a piece of scrap wood, we believe we've got that set to a nice 30mm, which is what the height of these slots should be, and in it goes nice and snug. So we can now cut the bits of maple for all of the ones in this pattern. Now all these bits are going to have to fit quite precisely, and they've got some slight burrs on the edges from the bandsaw, so they all get a rub on a bit of sandpaper that we've clamped to the table here, just to make sure the edges are lovely and smooth and square and not going to cause us any problems in the gluing process. Okay, here's all 32 bits of data, some zeros and some ones, test fitted into one half of the bowl. When doing a glue up, here's the golden rule: rehearse it, right? So no glue on here yet, all these bits are fitted, the other half of the bowl has to fit on top. This actually works out quite neatly, because the ones which stick up higher than the zeros form a kind of guide. If you can just get them engaged, then the whole thing should plop into place. So let's give it a try. So line up the ones. It's usually a bit counterintuitive, so that's got to be there, that's got to be like there, a bit further this way, a bit further this way. Oh, hang on a minute, we got something. Is it going? Yeah. Yes! And it fits together. How cool is that? It's no accident that all these bits are sticking out a bit proud. There's a good reason for that. We'll get to that. Okay, so all I have to do now is that exact same thing I just did, but with polyurethane adhesive all over the place. This is where all the swearing starts. And I can't get the lid off because it's glued in place. Oh, I love gluing things. It's always such fun. Oh, for God's sake. Okay, hang on. Yeah, okay. Fuck's sake. This is why you shouldn't stopper your glue with a chopstick. It just breaks when you try to take it out. I suppose it shows the glue works. Okay, take two. I've managed to get into the glue bottle. This is a good first step. Right, here we go. Delicious. Okay, that looks good to me. Now, yeah, I got it in my hand. Okay, glue on the other side. Here we go. Right. Okay. Please, please, please fit together. Which way are we going? We're going this way. Okay, so like this. A bit more that way. No, a bit more this. Shit, where am I? I'm misaligned. Okay. Like that. No, 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 no. Okay, like this maybe. Oh, it's going. Yeah. Yes! Woo! Haha! Delicious! Okay, no time to lose, it's got to be clamped. Right, that clamps in place, good. Now, what these cable ties are for is this. We have to stick a cable tie loop around all these bits because this glue foams up as it sets, and the foam, I learned this the hard way, can push these things out of place, and that would be unfortunate. So what this little loopy poo is going to do for us, let's just make sure it's properly centered, looks good, is going to keep all of these things in place while the glue dries. Whoops, bit of a faff here. Okay, I don't think that's going anywhere. Alright, now we're winning because, excuse me, I've got everything held in place where it has to be. I've got this horrible crap all over my hands, but that's okay. I can clean them up with a bit of alcohol later. So, all that has to happen now is more clamps. Well, I'm relieved that that is over with and that it worked. Now, leave that to dry. Alright, it's now the next day. Glue's foamed up nicely, this thing looks dry. So that was the hard part. The easy part is making a bowl out of this. So time to get it on the lathe. Okay, here's the blank mounted in the lathe. Now, this is the top of the bowl, and we generally want to turn the bottom of the bowl first. So the first step is to expand this mortise and dovetail it slightly so that the wood turning chuck jaws will fit it, and we can flip this around, turn the outside. Interesting thing you can see here, this little circle in the centre that looks purpler than the rest, that's the freshly exposed wood from where the hole was cut before. Sorry, that's the old wood. This is the freshly exposed wood. It's not as purple. So in one night of just sitting out, this has gone from fairly dull kind of brownish colour. It's already turning crazy purple, and that effect will just continue as time goes on, which is one of the great things about this wood. Right, that's the blank turned around. So this is now the base of the bowl, and we're free to start turning the outside. This is the bit that goes fairly quickly. So there have been a few bits of grain tear out. This was me being careless with a skew chisel and getting a catch, so I've just done a little repair on that, because if I try to get past the damaged bit by turning this down, I'm going to do what I did last time and make a tenon that's too small to grip. These bits here, there was some tear out of the grain. I don't know whether it was when I was turning or when I was cutting with the milling machine, but the edges of some of these bits have broken away, and we don't want to have to turn, you know, too much bowl away to get past the damaged bits. So these bits are all filled up with wood dust and super glue, and little spritz of accelerant makes the glue set rock hard quite quickly. Give it a few minutes and we can keep turning. Okay, the basic shape of this bowl is now established. The noise you can hear in the background is ventilation, because what I'm about to do is a little bit crude, but I'm going to actually do the final shaping of the bowl with an angle grinder with a very coarse grit flat wheel. Now the reason for this is because, probably difficult to see in the video, but the Purple Heart's very brittle and it tears, and with the best wood in the world and the sharpest tool in the world and the best technique in the world, you probably aren't going to get a finished quality cut on this stuff, especially not where you go into the grain. It's just not going to happen. Also, going across here, the best way to get a lovely smooth transition across the segmented bits is simply to grind the stuff away. That's that over with. The rest of the sanding goes as normal with normal sandpaper mounted in a power drill. So here's some sanding sealer. I thinned it out with some cellulose thinners. I've actually probably thinned it out too much, but we'll see where we get to. It's good to thin it because you want it to really penetrate the wood. This will contribute to the quality of the finish later on. It's important to remember to turn the speed of the lathe right down before doing this, unless you want to get covered in admittedly delicious smelling solvents. So we're ready to get some lacquer on here. Got some melamine lacquer here, slightly thinned with cellulose thinners. Let's give that a bit of a mix before trying to get it on. Got the lathe running nice and slow so we don't get splattered with the stuff. Here we go. Okay, that's the outside finished. So now it's a case of hollowing the inside of the bowl, sanding the inside, finishing the inside, and we're done. Okay, it's finished on the inside as well now, and it's off the lathes, that's good. So all this down needs is perhaps a gentle rub down with 2500 grit wet and dry paper once the lacquer's had at least 12 hours at room temperature to harden up, and then a coat of wax just to finish it off and give it a nice shiny buff, and then it's finished. Okay, there it is with a coat of wax. So, I think this is now, let's avoid leaving finger marks, I think this is now looking okay. We've got the binary sequence that goes all around the edge. There's the gap, so there's where it starts, 0, 1, 0, 0, etc. It's come out quite well, yeah, it's nice and shiny, and as time goes on, and with exposure to air and light, this purple heart will go from this kind of vaguely purplish colour we have right now to a hopefully a really deep, crazy, outrageous purple. And then, you know, in the decades that follow, it goes brown again. But for a few years at least, this bowl should be a colour that has no business being the colour of a wood that occurs naturally. And that's the binary bowl.